Perfect. Continue. We don't have an official agenda for this time. It'll be open meeting, but for a general layout, what I was thinking of is just like an informational piece on what the process looks like and what it has looked like historically. A discussion about who to interview and whether and how to narrow down the massive pool. So far, we've gotten over 80 applications to and determining how many of those we will interview and give the full interview and grading process and how we make that decision. And then a discussion about how to interview. We've got a set list of questions and a few other things to discuss under there. And then just the logistics of timing and scheduling these interviews. So to start off with, is there any discussion or concern about that sort of brief rundown of the agenda? And we can add more at the end anyway.
So who's on the committee?
So me, you, V, Terry.
Okay.
The four of us are going to make all the recommendation decisions on this.
Okay. And so we're not seeing any applicants today?
We're not seeing any applicants today.
Okay.
I was, when we were still down at 40, I was really excited hoping to interview them all. Now that we're approaching 100 and we have to make the decision in essentially what'll boil down to a week, I thought it was important to discuss beforehand the process for transparency's sake, because this is a public meeting. Whoever wants to could be here, and we will be posting this. I know I'll be posting it on my Facebook page as soon as we can. So to review the process as it has previously existed, there's an application window during which all the boards and commissions take applications. Obviously, this year is a little bit different because we've extended our process to allow a new round. During our first process, we had about 10 applicants, huge thank you to the folks who did apply. Recognizing the lack of diversity on the commission, the mayor recommended extending it and reopening it. So that's not a comment on anybody who did apply. Your willingness to serve is very much appreciated. It's just a comment on the current voices that are represented. So after this meeting where we hammer out the details, this group will interview a set list of applicants. We'll discuss in a little bit how we set that list and how we make that decision. But after we interview those applicants and rate them, we pass our recommendation on to the mayor. So the mayor has the ability to ignore our recommendations completely. Given the time constraints, I don't suspect she'll do that this time. She didn't last time either. So I want to make sure we do this process right and thoroughly. And that might, that could happen a lot of different ways. But she then recommends a list of 4 people to city council. So folks who are concerned about this whole process will have additional opportunities to lobby decision makers, namely the mayor and city council, near the end of July when she actually makes those recommendations and city council ultimately decides. So I haven't seen it very often, but on occasion the city council can and will recommend swapping out one of the mayor's recommendations for another applicant. I have no insight into what city council might do, but it is an opportunity for the community to make their voices heard in an additional way. outside of this process. Am I missing anything, Jeremy? And are there any other questions? Jeremy? Looks like Jeremy's having a little bit of, oh, there we go. I was just wondering.
Sorry, I lost sound there for a moment. What did you ask, Sean?
I was just wondering if there was anything I was missing.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. It's just there are multiple levels where the lobbying could occur, and I think you covered that great. So.
And any questions from anybody or concerns about, I know some of you are probably already familiar with that, but if anybody watching this after the fact or in the audience does have questions, feel free to send them to OregonSeanShivers@gmail.com and the police commission email as well. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but if you send it to me, I'll get back to you. All right, so now we have sort of three issues to start off with. Who do we want to interview? And how do we want to, well, first off, do we want to narrow it down? And how do we want to narrow it down? My personal preference is that given the, historic nature and our duty to the community, I would love to be able to interview everybody. However, with 100 applicants, that is 25 hours of interviews, no breaks, just 25 hours of interviews, which would mean roughly 10 days of interviews, 2.5 hours every night. Now, it's a lot to ask from anybody. And knowing the logistics of this, I also have an alternative idea that I'd like to put forward, wherein Jeremy gives us all the applications. We each get to read through them on our own, and then each of us can select 10 applicants that we personally feel we want to interview. The thing I like about this is that there's likely to be some overlap, so it'll narrow it down even further. Each of us can speak to various communities and solicit, additional feedback. We can each make these decisions in our own ways and give a lot of people the chance to interview with us without trying to interview them all to, respect all of our times. Yeah, so those are my two ideas. I'm open to more. Does anybody have any thoughts on these?
Well, for me, I understand that I like the idea of us each choosing 10, because as you say, as we did in that first meeting when we had how many ever applicants it was, we had actually pretty much agreed on the ones that we did end up choosing. That's just who we had all chosen. I doubt that will be as easy this time, and I'm sure we have a far more disparate group than we did the first time around. I don't know how everyone will come to that decision, and I'm assuming that we want to bring diversity to the commission. At the same time, we want to bring people who can fairly represent their district or where they live, because it is in there where you live. We try to get some balance there. So choosing the 10, and as you said, I think everyone will have to wrestle with their own options that were their own criteria that they would choose to choose that 10. And then I would suggest that we have one more Zoom meeting with our 10 in hand and begin to tally them while we're all together. And at that point, we can come up with the 10 and then interview those 10. That's my thought.
Okay.
I have a concern with that, though.
Yeah.
If we meet in a public meeting like this, and we were to discuss the candidates, unless we codify them and maybe number the applications.
Oh, you already missed, you missed when Jeremy said earlier that because we are not making decisions, we are not the full body of the commission. We are only advisory to the mayor who is making the decisions, that these meetings do not have to be made public. So I don't see any way to discuss applicants and hide who they are. I mean, that gets to be ridiculous.
I missed that because you guys
right. It was just, just before.
Yeah.
So is this a public meeting?
This is a public meeting.
So what was the decision between not needing to have a public meeting and having this as a public meeting?
So that let's cover that in a minute, about under like how to interview. First off, I would like to nail down just how we determine who to interview, because the discussion of whether to make this meeting or other meetings on or off the record, I think deserves its own sort of focus in a second. But determining who to interview and how many folks to interview, with the idea that I laid out before, it could be as many as 40 or as few as 10. So I'm hearing from Terry that we want to narrow it down further after we have an idea of who we all want.
Just down to 10, because I was going with your original number. I didn't know it could be more.
Well, each of us would come with 10. So,
right, each of us would come with 10, but then we would winnow that down or see where we have overlaps. Maybe there's only 14 that among us all.
But conceivably, there could be no overlaps.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It can be 40.
Right.
Because if each of us picked 10 different people, then it would be 40.
Yeah. I think there'll be some overlaps, is my guess.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some that are going to be easy to eliminate, perhaps.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about that idea is that it's still a really substantial number of folks. So, you know, it also allows us to eliminate folks who how to phrase this. There were some folks who didn't, bother to fill out the questionnaire before. And while they might have a lot to add to any discussion, there has to be some way to respect the time of the commissioners and get so the decision. This is the part I haven't talked about yet, but the decision we come to really needs to come in before the 24th, because of when City Council is going to go on break. So we need to get all this done in a really quick fashion.
So I have a question. Are we adding in the folks that already interviewed into our consideration pool of candidates? Or do we just start fresh?
So yes, they have applied. I would say they are still under consideration. And I personally will choose at least some of them to get a second interview, in order to keep the sort of playing field level. I would like to give out the questions to everybody who applies beforehand. I think it's the only fair way to do it, as well as give the folks who have already interviewed a chance to answer questions, the interview questions, in a...
Wait, run that by me again. You want to... So let's say you have 4 or 5 people who already interviewed. The list of interview questions will be provided to those people who
We
already
provided
interviewed?
to everyone.
To everyone.
Okay, all right. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that, I understand what we're talking here.
Yeah, no problem. And then Silver, I saw you had a comment as well.
Yeah, how many people have, in the last application run, how many people applied?
10.
And of those 10, how many did we speak to?
We spoke to all 10.
I'm personally of the opinion if we have 100 applicants, I want to see 100 applications.
So we will
see
definitely see all the applications. The question before us is how many of those applications do we interview in a Zoom meeting?
Silver, is there a number that appeals to you as far as looking at such bigger numbers now?
Yeah, I know. Well, here's the thing. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to actually do what the people who are protesting in the streets want.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to give a voice to the people who are wanting to see a change to the system. And they've put themselves out there in a position where, it's going to be difficult as a person of color to navigate the police commission or any of the other systems that are set up. And there's going to be a lot of people who are just getting their voice that are probably putting in applications. They've never had an opportunity to do something like this before. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're not familiar with parliamentary procedure. Maybe they're not used to the way a board or committee process works. Maybe they are. Maybe they're people who are, wanting to get involved but don't know necessarily what it is that they're doing. And those are the people that I want to see at the table. And those are the kind of people that I think should be heard. So I don't know, personally, what those applications are looking like at this point, since we haven't seen any of them. Mm-hmm. But if somebody's taken the time to fill out the application, to put themselves out there, and to try to be involved, I think it's our duty to try to fit them in to an interview and just to see, how they present themselves. So that's my personal opinion. No. I was on this process before when we had you come on, V, and Matt. Mm-hmm. And I know that process was a lot easier because we had, I think we had 5 applicants. Yeah. So it was a little bit easier to narrow it down. But in this instance, in this case, I would feel extremely limited to having 10 choices. And I would feel even less limited if 10 of those choices were overlapped. I think it would be extremely...
I'd like to sound off on what Silver said. I think that, and this is what I'm wondering, do we have to limit our interview to just one panel? Is there any legality as far as, I know that in the spirit of fairness, we want to have consistency in our interviews and, having the same panel of interviewers hear from the interviewees, and then basing our recommendations on that would be the ideal way to do it. But logistically, what you said, Sean, makes sense too. We have to interview 100 people. Time-wise is very time-consuming, but I also hear what Silver said, that we need to be equitable in our process of, selection, and it would not be fair to, screen down to 10 people, 10 applicants out of 100. That's 10%, and a lot of people might be left out. So I am wondering if we need to limit ourselves, if there's any any reason why, that we need to limit ourselves to just this one panel, or could we involve other board members, in helping us to find these candidates out of the 100? I mean, can we even split our group into, two, or add more people to it or something, to help us, which would then cut down the interview time,
Yeah.
I know when we originally received the these are possible dates and times, I was willing and able to sit in on all of those different occasions. I just want us to be as transparent as possible and as equitable as possible.
Yeah.
And I feel that having 10 as a limit would be extremely limiting and not transparent and equitable.
I'll answer with my personal opinion and then an answer to V. I actually also agree. I think part of our mandate on the ordinance is to build trust between the community and the city and the police department. And an excellent way to do that is by showing that we care about all of them. So I will personally, no matter what we decide, be calling everybody to connect them with other opportunities to engage in the city, as long as I've got their number in their application, so that nobody's completely left out and we still get a little bit on that. For V's answer, we can add more people to the subcommittee, and it is technically possible. It is logistically unrealistic because it would require another vote by the committee, and we need to make these decisions before. We need to have our recommendations to Lucy. Ideally, I would love to get them by the 21st. Realistically, we're not going to be able to before the 24th because they're going to be making their decisions on the 27th. The city council will be.
I don't want to tokenize myself, but I do want to say that I think you have their permission to call, that you would be willing to reach out, and I would be willing to be a part of that phone conversation as a commissioner to reach out to those people who weren't selected, and to have voice with you about where there might be other places for them to step in.
Well, my other part of my question was that, can we split our interview panel into two, because we have 4. Then essentially we would be able to interview twice the amount if we need to really set a quota. I also believe that we don't need to set a quota, like a number 10 or 20 or 15. I mean, that's very corporate. I think what we need to do is, this is my personal opinion, is to look at the 100 people and just see who we think we want to interview. And maybe Terry would come with 10, and Sean, you might come with 15, and Silver might come back and say, hey, I have 20 people, and then I might come back with 10, and then we'll see which one overlaps, and then we can then discuss and see, maybe we can extend the number, or maybe there isn't enough. Maybe all 100 don't really appeal to any of us. Who knows? But why limit ourselves by setting a number of 10 or 12 or 15?
Well, the biggest reason for that, V, is we have to give the mayor 4. At what point do you want to narrow down to 4? So at some point, people are going to be disappointed about 99 out of 100 or whatever it is. We got 3 openings, but we have to give her 4, because I'm sure she's not going to be interested in saying, well, we found 15 or 20 or 10 for you to interview.
That's not my point. I think this is my point. We weren't even going to be interviewing them, right? When we're looking at the applications, we're just pre-screening them based on their applications.
Right.
We would not then look at the application and make the recommendation to the mayor. We're missing one little point here, right? Which is we need to then interview them.
Oh, yeah. No, right now I'm just talking about getting them down to the number that we're going to interview.
Right, but we
So,
having an interview there. Sorry, 1 second, if you don't mind, Sean. Sorry to cut into your time, but my point was that we're going from looking at the application to interviewing them, right? We're not looking at the application and picking out 20 and saying, Madam Mayor, here is 20 people we recommend. That's not it.
Right.
Not it. We're going to pick out, let's say 20 or 30 or even all of them, and we just have to talk to them in an interview. Because
so what I'm hearing is that we have two steps here. We have a pre-screening process where we get all the applications, and we determine, do we narrow that down, or do we interview all of them? And I think we're hearing three different opinions where we have a very limited pool, a somewhat limited pool, and we interview all of them. I have made my personal opinions known, but I think in order to move forward, we have to compromise somewhere between the very limited and we interview all of them. And I think the best way to do that is picking out a pool and each getting the same number of pre-screened applications. That way it is equitable. I know I will personally be using, a variety of diversity qualifications and qualities that I'm looking for. But because we all bring different perspectives to this subcommittee, we each get to pre-select the pool that will be interviewed. So the question, I think, is how many people do we each want to be able to pre-select up to? If you don't want to pre-select that many, I think that's totally fine. But to V's earlier point, where we might have different numbers, we do have to limit it at a certain point. I came up with 10 arbitrarily, but that's because I think it would has the least likely.
I personally like V's decision that if, say I come up with 30 people, and I know that's frightening to some of you, that might be the case. I haven't seen any of the applicants at this point. Mm-hmm. I know that for me personally, there's going to be a few things that I'm looking at to my selections. And it's not necessarily a diversity lens. It's about who should have a voice at the table. And, I don't know these people. I don't know, anybody who's put in applications at this point. I know that there are people that are still putting in applications mm-hmm. that I've reached out to and said, please, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel you can get that many, then that's fine. I think that if we put a number on it, it's just too limiting and it's not transparent, and it doesn't feel as though people who haven't put in an application at this point would, well, why should I? Maybe they would say, or, it's already limited. So why should I take the time to finish this application? And I know we've all done that application. It's lengthy. Mm-hmm. You answer questions and then you answer them in double and triplicate. So it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to take the time from my own schedule to look at those applications and to set aside some time. I don't want to be limited by a number.
Yeah, and I think that, to be more equitable, I think that some folks are not going to be extremely good writers, but they are extremely intelligent, and they have the experience, not just intellectually but also culturally. And I think we need to take it beyond the piece of paper or document and give them consideration for that. I think we would be remiss if we don't.
Yeah. Terry?
I think 10 would be the bottom number limit, at least. we should all at least have 10, but I don't feel that there should be a top number, with the expectation that I'm not going to overload you guys.
Less than 50 then?
Maybe there's 51. I don't know. I can't say. I mean, we don't know who's put in yet.
I think
But I want this to be, I know this is going to be your last stint, right, Terry? You're going to be going out from this?
Me? Yes.
Okay. You know, I mean, I've appreciated having your voice at the table. I've appreciated your background. I've appreciated having conversations with you at not city council meetings or police commission meetings when we talked about your past life in California. But, you know, there's going to be other people that I think we have an opportunity to give them a chance to get involved. And I think that anybody who wants to be given that opportunity should be given an opportunity.
I will also echo that this whole process is rife with systemic barriers to participation that disproportionately affect folks who have not received the sort of upper middle class education that I have, or you know, don't have access to the technology. And I think the only way to, you know, I don't think there's a way to truly eliminate that from the process. I think the best way to reduce the impact of such barriers is by reaching out to everybody. At the very least, to show them that their application mattered. But I think in order to move forward with transparency, do I have a motion to the effect of the applicant pool? I usually try not to do motions in these subcommittees, but
Go Silver, you got a handle on it.
Yeah. So I think I would move that we have at least 10 with no upper limit of numbers of people, bearing in mind, we're not going to overload anyone, of the number of applicants that we personally bring to the next committee meeting to look at as possible interviewees for a future position on the Eugene Police Commission.
I second the motion.
sweet. Everybody in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Sweet. It's unanimous. I'm typing this right now to the. All right. So the second question then becomes, so how to interview. For transparency's sake, I would like to say off the bat that I do not feel like the interview process that itself should be publicly recorded because of it could be a public meeting. I don't think that's a good idea because a lot of folks they might share stuff that is part of their personal story that they do not want immortalized on the internet forever. And I want folks to feel safe as they can throughout this process. Is there any objection to that?
None.
Okay.
Can it be Sean, can it be considered as an executive session in a way, or?
I think just off the record, we don't need to, because if you do an executive session, first you have to open a public meeting and then go into executive session. And it gets complicated and, troublesome. But really just off the record, that also allows us to be more flexible in scheduling these. So if there's one person who is only available at like 9 a.m. for some reason, we don't have to public notice a week ahead of time, and we can all just get together when we're all available. I do think we should all be there, barring, absolutely unforeseen circumstances, for all of the interviews. and that we should take an average of our scores in order to determine the final. That way, if somebody does, if something unfortunate happens to any of us and we miss a meeting or more than one, it's the average that matters, not the total score. And then I'd also like to say that we should just use the same questions we used for the first time and let all of the new applicants know those questions ahead of time. That way, everybody has an equal opportunity to prepare and put some thought into it. V?
Yeah, I have a question. There may be a way to do 100 people. And here's just an idea, because even if we interviewed them, they would still have to get on a computer somewhere, maybe at the library, I don't know where, but they would still need to hop on the internet and to do this virtual type interview with us. Can we have them record answers to, maybe we can take out a few questions from the interview question list and do it in a two-step kind of, interview. First step would be for them to record like no more than 5 minutes, answering these, maybe 3 questions that we have.
So I thought about the pre-recorded idea. I decided not to bring it up because of the barriers to certain folks of understanding the technology and utilizing it properly. And also because part of the reason for the interviews is that face-to-face interaction and just like a vibe check. How well do we mesh as a group and how well do we work together? So I really like the thought, but I'd personally prefer to talk to them.
Can I clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, by all means.
Your points, which is really valid. We will still be interviewing them. This is just a screening process where we get them to pre-record. If they have access issue to technology, how would they even hop on to interview with us anyway? It could be a phone, it could be a recorded thing, where they can call up, because, right now they can join this meeting by telephone, right? So essentially there has to be a way for them to even maybe call up on the phone and just answer those questions. At least we'll hear their voice, and, they wouldn't, we wouldn't be screening them out based on the application, which is all written. It's all written.
Do you know what that way is?
What that way is what? I'm sorry.
You said there has to be a way for them to record this. Do you know what
I don't know the city's limitation as far as, I think that's something that their tech department would have to, advise Jeremy on. I really don't know, but I know that, it's possible.
I also don't know, so I would personally prefer to keep it as simple as possible. Even if
The library is not even open, so
No.
they can't do the library.
Well, they can call in and record.
We can call each of the applicants if you like, too. You could call, each of the people that you say you like, call and have a phone conversation with them. Or somebody that you think maybe not, call and have a phone conversation with them.
The difference is that we would all have to be there. Versus,
No, I mean just to make your choices, the whatever number you're choosing, your 10, your 15, your whatever.
All 4 people call them. Versus
No,
one.
I don't.
Okay, so let's say that, to be fair, we all talk to 100 people. You, Terry, would have to call applicant number 1. I would have to call applicant number 1, so on.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you could call
saying that.
whomever you thought you wanted to talk to. I wouldn't need to call them.
Guys, I think we've already decided who we're going to interview and how we pre-select, and we should move on to how we interview and the last step of that, which is, do we want the final decision of the final 4 that we're recommending officially to the mayor to be on or off the record? My personal preference is that it would be on the record, both for transparency's sake and because, frankly, there's nothing that I would not be comfortable saying in front of everybody that I am am comfortable in saying in front of you guys. That being said, I know that there are a lot of sensitive issues that go into this decision and who we eventually decide to recommend to the mayor. So I would also like that to, receive a discussion, and I don't think a vote's necessary, but does anybody have any opinions about, so right now we've got it. We each get we all get the applications. They're already being redacted so we can read through them. Even before the 10th, we can start reading through them.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of information is being redacted?
Personal information like their address and, go ahead, Jeremy.
Sure. So that's exactly what's been removed so far is address, and actually phone number has been redacted as well.
Okay.
As well as if the person has a disability, what that disability might be. And sometimes you got to read through there and just make sure there isn't anything else that is potentially dangerous to be included. So that's the kind of information that's written. Does that help?
That's unusual because I typically, with the understanding that it's private information, and given that type of info, I think we have that information from UV and from Matt and on other committees that are through the city and commissions through the city. Some of that information is included. And it just helps us to better understand. I mean, I don't care where people
Okay. Well,
Didn't you redact the last time we had the round where V came on board?
Yeah, we
I
just
think I remember
redacted the
redactions.
address, and
Yeah.
I don't believe anybody had answered yes to the disability question, so I didn't realize.
But would it be
just those kind of bits of information should be a part of our process of, well, this is somebody from the South, this is another person from South Eugene, another person from South Eugene,
It does have city ward on it.
like that.
Oh, it
So-
does.
Words
So
is
to clarify,
information.
it has ward, it has neighborhood, and as far as what you don't have is you don't have the specific home
Yeah, that's
address.
fine. That's fine. I don't need that stuff.
Okay. So it's just not trying not to victimize anybody by giving away their specific location.
No, I understand.
Yeah, as long as we have their relative zone or geographic area, because
Right.
it'll be conceivable that we might end up picking all the candidates from one area.
One thing that we never really take into consideration is, a person's not necessarily, class. I would love to have some people who represent renters who come from a place of poverty, like me, to be able to have a voice as well. So.
Yeah. I think the police commission lacks diversity on a whole host of fronts. And, Eugene lacks diversity in many respects as well. But just getting to whether, to run through, we have a pre-selection process. We each come back with a list of names that we want to interview. Currently, my game plan for that is to just ask Jeremy to set up the interviews with the whole list, barring duplicates. So we won't call them twice, basically. But set up interviews. Going forward, we'll want to schedule these as quickly as possible, which I'll get into on logistics. But after these interviews, my current plan is to come back together for another meeting, because I imagine with 20 plus applicants, more than 4 of them are going to be clustered around the top. So if we have 5 or 6 that are all around an average score of 40 something, then I think it warrants a discussion of who we send as the final 4 to the mayor for recommendation and who would be the alternates. And should that secondary meeting be on the record or off the record?
So one thing I don't recall when I interviewed for the commission was, is there some kind of a chart or something that explains the process of selection? You know, is there a chart that, you know, a flow chart, or maybe even just a description of, you know, this is where you are and this is the next step, and there's you know, because there are things that we're doing now that are different than when I was interviewing. I didn't do it, you know, virtually. And you know, I mean, just for transparency, I think we need to let the applicants know what goes on behind the scene.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, and I will talk to Jeremy about putting one together as well. Of process.
Well, let me ask you, V, when you stepped away from your interview, did you feel like you were going to be selected?
No, not at all. I waited, I emailed, and, you know, I never heard back. What I should have done was ask for all the interviewers, interviewer emails, and then I would have been able to just CC everybody, and hopefully one of you would reply. But no, I didn't hear back from anybody, and I was.
There's a lot of waiting, right?
Yeah, it was a
so
lot.
I will say that we had a good selection of people to choose from when you came up, and Matt was one of those people who were interviewed at the same time, and that, you know, it was a difficult conversation to have, but there were some people that really stood out. Those people didn't all get chosen. So I'm afraid that if we send 4 to the mayor, and 2 or 3 of those 4 get chosen, it's not going to feel very transparent. So I think we should have a little bit more, like give a little bit more of an option, maybe say 6.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking,
since there's 3 positions, we weren't trying to fill 3 before. So
we're trying to fill 4 at this point, right?
I mean 4, yeah.
Yeah.
So of the 6,
yeah,
these are our strong recommendations. And I know that she's going to want to hear that these are 6 that we enthusiastically put forward. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to put all my enthusiasm into those 6.
I do think we need to have 4 above and beyond because of the tight timeline on the city council side as well.
That's fine.
So that if we do need to cut corners, but yeah, I agree. Having 4 that are the top recommendations, and then even, you know, another 4 that are alternates. If, for example, they call those 4 and those 4 say, "Hey, turns out I don't actually have the time to commit to this," or whatever. Right. So having that option, I think, is a great idea.
Okay.
And do we want to have that discussion about the top 4 versus the 4 alternates on the record?
Well, I would move that we have 4 strong recommendations and 4 alternate recommendations that we put through to the mayor, who will then put through to the city council.
Okay.
So when she puts her 4 through to the city council, then they're the ones who got it, essentially.
City council then has an option of substituting those 4 for literally any name they want.
Yeah.
And we're doing this why?
So far,
in good faith.
That doesn't happen, or I have not seen that happen very often. I've only seen like 1 or 2 names get substituted out.
Well, I've never seen, in 4 years, I think I've done this interview committee at least 3 times. And I've never seen when we were trying to fill more than 2 spaces at once. So this is 4.
Yeah.
If we send 4 names to Mayor Venus, then that's the 4. So we have these alternates. I don't know. They're kind of the B plan. I'd rather send her 8 and let her have an actual choice.
So Terry, I've been trying for years to get on the Human Rights Commission, and I put in an application. When I put in my application for this commission again, and my commitment is I'm going to stick through my term and my terms. So I was given an opportunity to interview for the Human Rights Commission, but then I found out the Human Rights Commission meets the same evening as a health board that I sit on. So I said, thank you very much. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I want to give an interview and say thank you for allowing me this opportunity, but I'm committed to another few years this health commission, and I'll put my name back in. And hopefully I've made enough of an impression that I can get back onto the Human Rights Commission interview process again. But that does happen.
Yeah. So yeah, 4 strong recommendations and then backups in case something comes up.
Right.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, if as we said, if one of them backed out, then we're short one member. One candidate, and then we may have to do the interview all over again to find that one person, or we might have to go back into the pool. And I don't know. I mean, do we need to send the 4 in addition to the 4, or do we just keep the 4 additional backups to ourselves? And then
So what happened last time
yeah,
was there was enough time for Lucy to actually interview folks herself. And Will Davies had initially thought he was going to be able to stay on the police commission. So we were interviewing for 3 spots.
Mm-hmm.
We sent 3 recommendations with, just the number tallies. So Lucy will probably get, she'll probably get all the number tallies from everybody we interview and all of our thoughts on them. And then, choosing the 4th highest person in recommendations was not a big jump for her because of the way it shook out, just this last time.
if we send her 8, the 4 main ones and then the 4 backups, would she even interview the 4 backups too, in addition to the 4 main recommendations?
I do not know whether she will have enough time to interview any of them at all.
Okay.
So I don't want to speak for her either way, but I would predict that she is very busy right now.
But I bet she'll do this one. I'll bet she'll do this one.
She usually makes an effort, but
yeah, this is not the one you say, oh, I don't have time to interview
No.
the new person for the police commission. I don't think so.
Especially if she's the one who extended the application.
Yes, absolutely. I think she is as concerned as everyone to get a different, more representational, diverse, whatever, all of those things. I'm sure she is just as interested as all of us are. I'm for sending her 8 and not determining that one is the A team and one's the B team. Just send her 8 names.
Mm-hmm.
She can choose whether she wants to interview them all or not. And the reason that gives, or 6. But 4 is like, oh, she has no choice. 4, that's the 4.
Yeah, I think we should still, because we have a better insight on what the commission needs. We should provide her with as much information from our perspective as possible, including which of those 8 we favor over the others.
Well, we can have, there'll be some sort of rating. I think we've always,
Okay.
ABC, however rating, whatever rating rubric you want to use, there's always been a rating. Yeah.
Then everybody in favor of sending these recommendations, say aye.
What's the number?
So the 8 total recommendations as per your motion earlier.
Okay. Yeah, aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nope.
Sweet.
So somehow I'm missing the piece where we've all been reading all of the applications and we've decided on our 12, 13, whatever it is we've chosen. Who are we telling about that? Are we not getting together, the 4 of us, and saying, here's my 13, anybody got those? Or we're not doing that? Or we're just going to give it to Jeremy to
we
deal
can
with?
do that if you'd like. I was currently thinking we would just send them to Jeremy and let him begin scheduling the interviews as soon as he could. So we can get into logistics now as well. Let me pull up my calendar. So
The
in order
24th
for
is like 2 weeks.
Sorry?
The 24th to be the deadline for having interviewed, or is that to give them notice of the interviews, the 24th?
24th is to have them interviewed by.
Having had them interviewed. Okay.
And if if we want Lucy to be able to interview all of them before if we don't want to put her in a real bind about the situation, we need all of them interviewed ideally by the 21st.
Okay.
Because even that gives her essentially 3 days to interview people. Because the actual day that they're going to be recommended is, my understanding is that it's the 27th. So that's another reason why limiting the number of applicants is probably necessary. But right now, I'm operating off of this the idea of a 3. So today is the 6th.
He said, I think Jeremy said tomorrow. He might be able to email us as soon as tomorrow, maybe the next day, all of the applications. So we'll have that.
Yeah. All of the applications except the ones
that
that
have not
come in before the 10th.
The 10th.
So go ahead, V.
I was going to ask, are we able to at least reconvene for even 30 minutes once we've submitted the list of people we selected? And the reason is I trust Jeremy in looking at the overlaps and all that, and then essentially come with a refined list. But I think that if there's a couple of people that we really feel strongly for, and they ended up being weeded out, I think that would, kind of.
I'd like to have that meeting because we've always done that before. The committee talked first. We weren't doing this virtual stuff anyway. So we sat with the 10 applications and we looked at them and we talked about them, and I'd like that.
Yeah. Okay. So we can, because of this new tool Jeremy has, it should be possible to get together as early as Monday the 13th to do this. And then have the first round of interviews start on Tuesday the 14th and just go throughout that week. I know some of us have schedule restraints that make it difficult to meet before 5 o'clock. So I'm thinking 5 to 7.
On what day? The 13th?
The 13th and the 14th. And honestly, just 5 to 7 every day until we're done with the applications.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Because I want to get through them, and I don't want to. 2 hours seems like a good time. We have a little bit of time to run over that if folks take a little bit longer. What is that? That is 8 applications a day, which is a lot. And the mental fatigue of the first person you interview versus the last person you interview, just from our position of judging, our judgment changes as we get tired. So
15th and 17th are bad days for me. Those are officially established work days.
Okay.
5 to 7. Those are bad days for me.
Right.
So I can do earlier in the day if that's something that we can do.
Okay. I have no problem earlier in the day.
I have no problem earlier in the day.
Okay. And that'll give folks who do work nights some help as well, even though it is unfortunate. Well, we can talk about that as well, but the necessity of having Thursday nights free is one we'll also have to work around. But what say we to 1 to 3 on Wednesday and Friday?
Okay, but Monday's still 5 to 7?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was the, shoot. What did I say? What days?
You said Wednesday and Friday.
It would be Wednesday and Thursday.
I have an idea.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, can we settle on that? Because I
Yeah.
like to put it on my calendar.
So it would be the 15th and 16th.
15th and
Right.
16th.
Yeah.
I am
The-
actually busy on Friday after 5. So
We could do early on Friday as well.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Early on Wednesday or what? Okay.
So
Now I'm lost.
Wait, this is
let
all.
me run through.
Can we go through the days and time?
Yep. So just next week, and these are not necessarily we will, because if nobody can actually interview that time, we won't have to do it. But openings are for our schedule 5 to 7 on Monday and Tuesday, 13th and
Yes.
14th.
Okay.
1 to 3 on the 15th, 16th, and 17th.
Wait, hang on. I'm trying to write this down. So Monday the 13th. Is that
5
the
to 7.
5 to 7?
Tuesday the 14th, also 5 to 7.
5 to 7. Okay, and I trust that we're gonna get this in an email with all the.
Yeah, I'll send a screenshot of my personal calendar, so that'll be a little bit easier for me to do than writing it all out. Second question, on Saturday, because 8, if we don't get through them all that week, then I'd like to open up Saturday as well. I know lots of folks have family and other things they want to do. However,
I think when we met with the committee before, it was on a Saturday, so I'm fine with Saturdays.
Okay.
For that week especially, I mean, if we're already setting aside that time.
What about the day that we're gonna reconvene as a subcommittee?
I was thinking that would be Monday the 20th.
Okay.
With
Wait a minute.
Whoa. Well, I don't know. My question was, isn't there going to be a time where we're all going to discuss the applicants together
Yes.
before we decide, or it's decided who's being interviewed?
Yeah,
Monday
later.
the 13th.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. So Monday the 13th,
Morning.
we have our lists.
What it is?
Sorry. Can I hear what Terry said and then what V said again? Terry first.
So Monday the 13th, we come to our meeting and we have our list of who we like, so that we
Yeah.
can say, oh, I really like her, fight for her or him or what, so we can talk about the applicants a little bit.
And that's 5 to 7. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I thought that was the day that we're interviewing.
Oh, no, 15, 16, 17 interviews. Or maybe 14 too,
14 as well. But yeah,
if we can get a hold of them quick enough.
if we can get a hold.
Yeah,
Because
that's
we're
kind of a
talking
quick
about them
turnaround.
at 7 o'clock on Monday night. I don't know that we're going to be able to interview the next day. We haven't even gotten it to Jeremy yet.
Yeah, I think Wednesday might be a little better, more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Then we would have to do a Saturday.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay. All right.
Jeremy's got to have some time to.
All-nighter on Saturday?
I used
We
to
used to
do
do in
all my
college.
laser tags on Saturday, so I'm still
Yeah,
up
we
till
used
the
to.
3 in the morning.
My first time through college, we'd go to Denny's and just drink coffee all night and study.
On Saturday, I'm thinking 10 to noon and then 2 to 4.
10 to 2 to 4. Can we, is it possible to do it a little bit
To
after
move.
then? Because I kind of have plans in the morning.
Oh yeah, I'd love to not do mornings. I hate getting up
too.
before 10. So
New schedule for Sean. How about 11 until 3? Just a straight shot.
To what and what?
a straight shot. 11. So do we want 11 to 3?
Well, you know what? We can determine that really after we have decided. I mean, after we know how many interviews And after we know how long it's going to take us on the 3 days, then
Okay.
we'll know what we need to do on Saturday, if it needs to be an all-nighter or 2 hours.
Okay.
I like
Um,
Terry's idea.
Not
Copy
getting so
on me.
crazy here.
On Monday, I'm gonna add an extra hour, so it's 5 to 8, and add and decide on Saturday, just in case.
That's fine.
And then when do we get back together to, you know, come up?
Great.
Do we have any applicants that we're going to interview on that Monday?
Right now, it's looking like Monday the 13th will not have any applicants interviewed.
Could we start with some of the interviewees that we've already gone through? Since they've already been a part of the process, it'll be fair to them, and we get done 2 things at once. Because
Do
5
we
to
have to
8 is
re-interview them?
We don't have to re-interview them. I would like to re-interview them so that they have a chance to answer the questions in the modern context.
Mhm.
Um,
In the whole new world.
yeah. And
But here's my question. I understand the present time issues and current issues and all that, and it's more fair for them to put it in that context. But at the same time, they've already been interviewed.
Yep.
And so we are essentially saying your time is not valuable, even though you've gone through the process already. We're going to put you through the meat grinder again. So is that fair? Or can we just, and I know that in a way that we want to also have Silver's input on these applicants, right? Because we can't, we just can't pick them out and say, Silver, you're going to agree with us or thou way or the highway. That's not fair either. So it's kind of I think we need some thoughts to that, I think, a little more.
Jeremy, did you have something to add to this?
I just want to let you know that a couple of the people who were already recommended by the commission for appointment did reach out to ask if they needed to interview again. They wanted to let me know that they were more than happy to do so. They just wanted to make sure that they were still being considered.
Oh, okay.
They understood the need to go out. They were they understood the need to go out and try and increase the diversity pool, but they also wanted to make sure they had the opportunity. I can't say that I'm speaking for all of them, and you may just want to go with 4 that were originally going to be appointed by council, were on the calendar there to be appointed. You could just interview just those 4, or you could interview all of them. It's up to you.
So just as a sign of good faith, and since they've already been a part of the process, and since we're trying to cut down this time, I think it would be fair to say we'll have some time to set up and have an interview with them on Monday the 13th. Since
Okay.
we have time that 3 hours expanse that we can work in and operate in. So just so we're getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go through an entire interview with them in the same way. We can say, given, are there things you'd like to add since your last interview, given the circumstances of today? Do you want us to know anything more?
Given Silver's participation this time around, as well as, just the questions we've got to ask everybody for consistency's sake, I think I don't see any problem of bringing the 4 back that we already recommended to interview again on that Monday. I think it's an open question whether we need to re-interview everybody that we interviewed last time, even the ones we didn't recommend. I would say no, because we already got to compare and contrast the answers of those 4 versus the other 6, whereas we have not had the chance to compare and contrast those 4 to the new 85. I will schedule it so that on Monday we decide on, we have a final circle up about the application, the applicants that we will interview, decide on whether we need to meet on that Saturday, and do the re-interview of as many of those four as are able to schedule on Monday.
So I would use a different term than circle up. It just sounds a little offensive to Indigenous people.
Okay.
And that's, just really quickly. And for transparency's sake, we don't have to interview all the others, but if I can see the applicants so they still have a possibility of being somebody who's chosen. I know that you all already kind of made a decision on those, and I think, again, transparency's sake, I'd like to see those applications, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
V?
Yeah, question. Wouldn't it be an unfair, I know they've been interviewed and I think we picked out some of them. But if the questions are the same that we're going to be asking them, isn't it kind of moot? Because they're going to essentially know what we've asked.
Well, they're all going to know that.
That's one of the reasons that I think it's important to inform everybody of what the questions will be before the interview.
And do we
go ahead.
I have a second part to my question, if you don't mind. So my second part of my question is, do we need to update the interview questions to reflect, what our needs are for the commission? I think it changed, right? I mean, some aspects of it, given the current circumstance of, current events.
I think personally, my thought is that the answers might have changed, but the questions still elicit the kind of feedback we need to make a decision. I don't have them in front of me, but we can take a look at the questions as well. If we want to change them up, it is possible. I am personally, Jeremy, did you have something to add?
No, not at this point.
It is possible. I am personally wary of changing them up for perceived bias one way or the other. Right now, we are currently in an upswell of voices that have traditionally gone unheard. And because they are speaking right now, I suspect there will soon be backlash across the city in the other direction, because that is often what we see in this push-pull.
What do you mean?
I mean that for the last 2 years, we've heard from across the community that what we really need is more enforcement, and that those people are not gone, and they do not feel their emotions and their opinions are not gone, and that even though we currently see a push in the other direction for less enforcement, I do not want to risk the credibility of the commission by being seen as ignoring those voices.
I think just using those terms, less enforcement, more enforcement, isn't really fair. I think it's just a different perspective of allocations and different ways that we're looking at funding and what our priorities are. So I understand what you're saying, and I know that there's always gonna be somebody who has an issue with something, but I just really think it's important that we allow this opportunity to have some voices in the room and at the table who we've been reaching out to for a long time. Mm-hmm. That's what all these conversations that we're doing in the public are supposed to be for, right?
Yeah.
To try to get people on the bench. I love my baseball metaphor. You want to build the bench. You got your starting pitcher and your rotation, but you got to make sure that you got people in the for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I am just worried about changing up the questions when these are the questions we've used before,
Yeah.
because of the perceived bias in either direction about why those changes were made.
I understand that. Makes
They're
sense.
pretty general. Could you email those to us, Sean, if you run across them?
I think.
The questions?
I already emailed them to you last week, so
Oh,
they're in
okay.
your inbox.
Okay.
Perfect. I'm not going to look at those right now, but
Yeah, there was homework that you sent us that time for the upcoming meeting and everything else, Jeremy. So I've been doing my homework.
I knew I'd seen them recently, and I haven't been digging through my back catalog very much.
I've been just reading so many different policies and different things that we're going to be looking at. It's hard.
Yeah. So of those, what I'm hearing is that on Monday we'll have a brief time of what's a better idiom? A brief discussion about the final pre-screened applicants to receive an interview, as well as schedule as many of the original 10 applicants. Jeremy?
So this is to occur Monday, the 13th, from 5 to 8. Do you want me to schedule those 4 applicants for that are being re-interviewed at the tail end of the evening, or do you want me to try and move them toward the front of the evening so that you have more predictable? Now you guys are having to wait around. I'm not sure.
So thinking about it now, with the new application process, I don't know. Shouldn't they also be subject to the same pre-screening selection as everybody else? That question is primarily directed towards Silver.
Yeah, I figured. I don't think so. I mean, they've already gone through that process, right? The only reason that we're doing this is so that we can have we can say that we're being transparent and that we're giving them an opportunity just like everyone else.
You know, and as I recall, I got to thinking about it when we came down to those 3 or 4, whatever it was we chose to send the mayor. I remember there being one other applicant that we really, really, really wanted to send, and it just didn't meet the criteria or somehow, and it was everybody there was saying, we really wish we could have included this one, but somehow we couldn't. So I don't mind seeing all the applications again, but as you say, they've been through the rest of it.
All right. So they, they do get an automatic interview because they've already been interviewed.
Yeah.
However, otherwise they're being
Considered
reconsidered.
with everyone. Yeah.
I think that candidate that Terry is referring to was actually the 4th candidate, which was not going to be appointed because Mr. Davey was going to be. So that person was the runner-up, so to speak,
Right.
and was then moved into that position at that time. So that was one of the 4 that I thought you were asking me to bring back on that, some of that concern. I think that was one of the people we were talking about bringing back on that Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
That being said, to Silver's point, he has not had a chance to interview any of them. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So if I could suggest,
Yeah.
we not wait until the tail end, if we can do it like at 6:30, 6:45, so we have a little bit of chance to meet, discuss a little bit, and then if we don't really need to fill out the rest of that 8 o'clock time frame, get done earlier, that'd be fine.
That sounds good.
Well, with 10 applications previously, we can fill up that whole time. What I'm hearing from everybody is that we do want to re-interview all 10, not just the top half of that.
I thought we were going to interview the ones that we selected.
You mean from the
Yeah.
last time, Sean?
From the last time.
From the
yes.
last time he's talking about? No, just the 4.
Just
Yeah,
the 4,
Right,
Sean.
Silver? Yeah, just the 4.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking at the other applicants so that
Okay.
you made
I
that
just want to
decision.
see the applications
I
as
just
part
like
of the pool.
Yes.
Right. No, we don't have to interview all of them. And
Yes.
it's again a sign of good faith to those who weren't selected, or even to be a part of that
Mhm.
process.
Maybe they'll have the chance now. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to look at their applications and see
Sweet.
if there's somebody.
I misunderstood you. Thank you
Okay.
all for correcting me.
I almost panicked there.
I was
So did me.
panicking. Yeah, so honestly, I think we'll only need half an hour to say, hey, these are the 10, 20 that I'm putting forward as deserving, or as not everybody deserves an application, as the unfortunate necessity of needing to limit the applicants who receive interviews. We get that 30-minute of discussion, and then
Yeah.
and then we can move right into the interviews of those, and as many of the initial 4 as are able to interview on Monday.
On Monday.
Question.
B.
Do we really need 3 hours on Monday? If we're
We may not.
I don't think we will, but
if we're interviewing 4, that would probably be no more than an hour, 15 minutes.
Right.
And then
yeah.
then if we're just meeting up to say, here are our list of candidates that we recommend, then it shouldn't be. I don't think it would take more than 2 hours.
I
Okay.
also don't think it will take more than 2 hours.
But you wanted to slate it so that there's a chance of overlap or whatever.
Only because we'll be discussing whether we need Saturday as well. And I thought this was only going to take an hour of discussion, and we've already
And here we are.
gone over. So yeah, I'm putting it on my calendar as 5 to 8, but because these particular discussions don't need to be on the record, we have some flexibility due to the public note in regards to public notice. So
Okay.
yeah.
So we're good. Jeremy?
Jeremy?
So, sorry, the in the weeds guy. Got to make sure I'm getting this right for you. So, what our meeting will start at 5 o'clock that day. Each interview applicant will have 15 minutes, I believe is what we discussed, to go through their questions. So then if I'm starting them at 5:45, I'll be scheduling them in increments from 5:45 up until the 6:45 end. Does that sound right to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Or do you want
and
me to
for
start them at
clarity, I would say
and
that
go
it
to-
10 minutes per applicant and then 5 minutes to.
In between.
And that's the same amount of time we're given for everybody, 10 minutes.
Mhm.
That's a question.
10 minutes now instead of 15. Is that right?
So yeah,
Yeah.
10 minutes of like actual question and answer, and then 5 minutes for us to actually write down our thoughts about the applicant. And yeah, so we don't forget, days later.
Okay.
Okay.
I hope you guys don't mind that I bring my food on Monday and eat
Yeah.
because I need my food.
Worst,
That's all right.
worst thing about being chair is that I can't just be eating the whole meeting.
Your microphone might hit the food.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that is all of the
That's it.
stuff that I had planned. Is there anything else anybody feels like we need to discuss going forward? I feel like we've got a really strong game plan.
Just for clarification, these interview meetings are not going to be on public record.
Correct. They will not be recorded to respect the privacy of the applicants.
Okay. And when can we expect the applications to start dropping in our emails?
Tonight. Well, maybe not tonight, but
I don't want to
That's
put
a Jeremy
you,
question.
Jeremy.
So I am going to be finishing up that redaction tomorrow and sending out everything I have up to this point. And then you will get a second installment of the remainder following Friday. So probably arriving, if I can get them out Friday, I don't think you're going to get them Friday because they have through Friday. So I think when you're going to see them is going to be probably Monday morning.
Okay, so tonight
Okay.
and Monday morning.
No, not tonight, tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tomorrow and Monday.
I lied. Yeah.
Calm down,
You
Silver.
do you. You do you, Jeremy. I know this is, the COVID thing has made just a blurred line between work and home. So I understand you need to do you and set that up for yourself. But thank you. Thank you. And thank you again for setting those out in PDFs as well. It's just made it a lot easier to kind of read through. For some reason, Mozilla doesn't work well with any of the different archives that the city website has. So all of my stuff has to go through.
It's actually helped me a lot too because I can read them on my tablet now.
Yeah.
Really? Has it been helpful?
Yeah.
Yes.
PDF
Thank
is
you to
easier.
Silver for recommending that too because I was suffering and I didn't even know.
I can read mine right here in San Francisco.
And it takes a while to get to V in space.
Jeremy?
I wanted to say just what, because I noticed everybody's talking with Terry earlier about how this was, the end of her term. I want to remind her and invite her to know that because you are appointed for like a 4-year term and you're leaving a little bit early, you are still. You can
So
still.
I'm actually leaving a little late. I'm leaving a little late. I've been here 4.5 years.
Just saying that you are absolutely welcome to be here, and that would be great probably for quorum as well on this Thursday at the police commission meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to know that you're invited. There, a couple of our commissioners don't have that because have that opportunity because their terms are at an end, and so Bill Whalen will not be able to, and Edward Gehring will not be able to, but you and Mr. Davey can. So I just want to let you know that you are very welcome and would be very much appreciated
Oh,
for purposes.
that's right. I had to meet both mayors. So I didn't even remember going through the process the second time. Yes. So yeah, I'm on my second round. Okay.
Also,
See you Thursday.
yeah, thank you. We really need your help to meet quorum. Also, I'd also like to just end this by thanking you all for volunteering your time and energy for this process. I think it means a lot. So,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, everybody stay well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we'll see you Thursday at the meeting. And then Monday at the meeting. And then Wednesday at
My
the
new
meeting.
family.
Bye.
Bye, all. Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.